Good morning and welcome to LogiSYM Asia Pacific 2021. I'm your host for this morning's sessions, and with me is Tian, Director and Founder of Tian Associates, Vice Chairman, International Alliance of Robotics Associations, and Honorary Advisor, Asia Pacific Assistive Robotics Association. He will be leading the roundtable discussion focusing on reviewing the roadmap to the exciting transformation journey of adopting AI and automation technologies. Oliver, over to you and to your panel.
Thank you, Marcus. Hello all. Once again, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you, depending on where you are in the part of the world. I'm very honored today, actually, to host this panel, to moderate this panel. And we have actually a roundtable of very experienced technology providers as well as user of technology. The name of this panel is AI and automation, right? Whether it is a novelty today, perhaps we may think of it that way, and will it be a necessity tomorrow? A novelty today, perhaps, but a necessity tomorrow. And I believe the message that we are seeing, the trend that is going forward, is that AI and automation will play a major role in contributing to a operation. Now, for those of you who have listened to my earlier presentation before this panel, you would understand where I'm coming from and what we hope to discuss. Now, in my panel today, we have 5 very distinguished members. Let me give each a very brief introduction, and I'll let them have a word or two following this. First of all, we have Ms. Ada Lim, co-founder and operations director of Glee Private Limited. They have actually created a product for robotic process automation and very successfully deployed in different sectors, and particularly in the logistics space. From Malaysia, we have Mr. Suho Hock Meng, right? Meng for short, good friend of mine, who is CEO of Duospark as well as IMS. And Meng has got extensive effort in looking at how logistics can adopt AI and robotic solutions. Next, we have 2 very distinguished gentlemen. Firstly, we look at Mr. Jonathan Kwok. Jonathan is with the general manager with Honeywell, with a host of experience, both in Southeast Asia as well as China. In fact, as I talk to him and get to know him better, I'm impressed with the vast experience they have over the last 3 decades around how the warehouse operations could be automated and how technology could be adopted. Last but not least, Mr. Joseph Lim from BluJay. In fact, for those of you who have been listening to the radio, Joseph was recently interviewed by Rachel Kelly, a very good friend of mine. Rachel Kelly actually helped co-host some of my activities last year. And Joseph also come across with a wealth of experience in the logistic and supply chain space. So we're very honored to have these members of our team. And I will now probably go through the members and let them have one word or two, one line or two, to talk about their thinking, how AI and automation is going to impact the supply chain. So ladies first, Ada, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Oliver. Yes, thanks for the kind introduction. Yes, we are very excited to be, into the space of automation and AI, whereby especially in the logistics space, where we speak to people and they say, hey, I've got more business now. In fact, all this increase in demand, etc. And we are happy to be able to help people automate, even from the basic tasks of, say, goods receiving and then, packing and deliveries and etc. Yeah. Thank you. Over to whoever's next. Yeah.
Thanks, Ada. Meng? Meng, we're not able to hear you. Meng, we're not able to hear you still. Maybe Meng will get things sorted out. Let me move to Jonathan.
Oh, hi there. This is Jonathan, and then I think it's exciting for this topic today. with my 26 plus years experience in logistics supply chain, and we'd like to see that how this topic goes, and then to learn something from there. Thank you.
Thanks. Joseph?
Thanks, Oliver. So I think with BluJay Solutions, right? I think you guys know that we're celebrating our 50th year anniversary next year. So it's been a long history, helping customers with software execution, and making sense of their data, and that's where the AI and the intelligence comes in. So definitely, I think want to be involved in this discussion, trying to get really excited about this discussion as well. So let's hear from the panel. Let's talk about the trends. Let's see what's on everyone's mind today.
Wonderful. Thanks, Joseph. Meng, are you ready? Can we hear from you? No, I think we still are missing Meng.
Hi.
So let's
me now.
Sorry. How about William?
Yeah, let's go to William. Now, William is probably the one with the experience from the other side of the table. So, William, let's hear from you.
Hello, everyone. I'm William from uParcel. We're actually a same-day delivery platform that connects a demand for last mile delivery to drivers, different assets that can then fulfill this demand. So I'm probably the only end user right here, right now, right? And the title, it says that novelty today or reality tomorrow. Actually, to us, it's really a reality. We use a lot of AI and machine learning to route the jobs on a daily basis, because there are just thousands of jobs happening every day on demand. That's impossible for a human or a team of human trying to route the jobs. The delivery may have already been completed when they try to route this job manually. And we use these machine learning tools to help us optimize the routes and parcel out the deliveries to the most optimal assets.
Thanks, William. And for the audience, you probably realize that I wanted William to say a lot more, because he has probably the experience that you want to hear in terms of the actual user exposure to the technology. Meng, are we still having you?
Can you hear me?
Yes, Meng. Go ahead, please.
Hi, sorry. I think there's something wrong with my internet. So you just have to ignore my ugly face. Hi, my name is Meng. I've actually had a passion, like Oliver had a passion for AI many years ago, when it was at its infancy. But not being a programmer, I kind of left it to my accounting career to take over. And recently, when my partner and I started Duospark Resources and AGCOE, we went back into the automation and AI space. And we actually do have a real passion for AI and automation. So very glad to be on this panel, and very glad to be invited to LogiSYM. I think it's the last couple of days, yesterday was actually very exciting. And unfortunately, I had to skip some of the sessions because of other commitments. But thanks, Oliver.
Thanks to the introduction by the panelists. Right now, we have a very exciting topic for this discussion. We have probably about 40 minutes to go. AI and automation. Today, many of us think of it as a possibility. Many of us think of it perhaps as a novelty. But the reality as we move forward is tomorrow it will become a necessity. Not adding AI into your automation will give you the disadvantage in your business operation. So I'm going to now turn to my panel and ask them a couple of questions. Right? Maybe to start off, I'd like to hear from perhaps Joseph and William. What do they think are the main challenges and drivers to adopt AI and automation from a deployment perspective? And let's try to keep ourselves short so that we give everybody a chance. So maybe we start with Joseph.
Thank you, Oliver. So I think I think William make a really good point, and that's where BluJay is really in alignment with uParcel as well. I think AI is making a lot of strides in actually the dynamic route optimization. Managing numerous variables like delivery time windows, whether your end customer is a retail shop that has a opening hours, ad hoc pickups, traffic patterns. that's where AI really kind of differ from a manual workspace where without AI, that's actually almost impossible to actually operate. And also another point where the drivers of adopting AI is actually workflow automation and compliance. When organizations look at the best practices and look at compliance, let's say a workflow needs to happen 1, 2, 3, A, B, C. It needs to happen in this particular way, or certain documentation needs to be done, especially, let's say, for example, ocean freight, air freight. Certain documentations needs to be complied to. So that's where AI comes in really well as well. Generating all these workflow automation, generating all these documentations. So that's where I see a big driver in the industry for AI as well as automation.
Thanks, Joseph. Let's hear from the user side. William, what do you think?
Yeah, thanks, Joseph. Thank you. So I would think from a user perspective, right, the main challenge will be actually first around a lot of awareness what AI can do for your company and your operations, and a lot actually users don't really know beyond the basic of AI, and they need to really go deeper into understanding what will actually benefit them, what things can be automated. So then when you really know what you need to do, then comes the challenge of data and deployment. First, a lot of companies actually don't collect data. Right? If they are still using a lot of manual, like be it pen and paper or storage in Excel, you may think that you have the data, but it's not data that is usable in terms of machine learning, in terms of their deployment. And next will be really trying to use this data or have the talent to help you build these AI models that can then be trial and then used. And most of the companies probably don't have enough deployment engineers, talent, people who are trained to develop and then maintain this model, because it's not like a program that you really develop or write for the first time and then you use it for the next few years. A model needs to be able to continuously learn and then adjust itself, and you need to really maintain it in a way. Like some of the, just give you an example about how some of our jobs are being optimized or clustered, right? In a sense that if any human goes in, you may not really know what were the variables that were under consideration by the system, because they take in a lot of other variables, like what Joseph mentioned, right? Opening time, availability of customers, traffic pattern, and all sorts of things, which is really too much for any human to comprehend. And we also need to then analyze the output of this optimized route or clustering to really think about whether the output makes sense from an end user. Because the machine may think that, oh, okay, based on the data they have, we have these outcomes. You still need a lot of analysis. There's a human behavior and say, okay, if you say that this route is the most optimal, why, which kind of clustering, which then require a lot of in-house talent. People are familiar with data analytics. People are familiar with how the machine recommend you a certain kind of outcome. To be able to really adopt AI in a useful manner for the company.
Right. That's very interesting sharing of your experience, William. In fact, I hear a few things very loud and clear, right? Do we have sufficient data to do the analysis? And secondly, it's an ongoing learning model. It doesn't stop on the day of deployment. That's good advice. I'm just wondering, across the border, Meng, do you have any suggestions to add on?
Sorry, interestingly, I was this is one of those things I was thinking about because we have had a number of experience implementing logistics management solutions with clients. And one of the key things that we always start with is the question of what, what do I need to do to start off the whole exercise, and then the question is how do I do it, and who do I work with to get this deployment done. So to me, critically, one of the stumbling blocks is actually the roadmap. For somebody to understand, people will have a rough idea as to what they want to achieve as an outcome, but really what they need is somebody to help them draw out the roadmap, identify where are the pain points, mission critical points, and then do some kind of phasing, because this is one of those things that cannot be implemented overnight. We really have to phase it out in a very structured way, because as Oliver mentioned earlier, the human element is also very important. People need to feel comfortable that this is augmenting what they do rather than being a threat to what they do, right? So for example, to give you an example, in one implementation, the drivers were strangely very keen, because they found this to be a real benefit to them. Instead of having to collect paperwork, they actually get notification on an app to tell them where to pick up. It gives them an idea as to what sort of, because with route planning, it gives them an idea as to how long it will take to get there, and even automated route planning, so that it helps them avoid some of the more heavy traffic areas, and that saves them time and effort.
Yeah, actually, I want to add that it's not only saving time and effort, it's stress level, right? When
Yes.
you're on the road, the weather conditions sometimes may not allow you to take it easy. So an assistant, an intelligent assistant that can advise you and prompt you will be very powerful. Jonathan, what do you think? I know you've got experiences with China. So realistically, there can be some experiences you can share with us from what you do in China. Over to you, Jonathan.
Yeah, okay. I think in China, as you can see, people really would like to move on to the AI and automation. I think this pretty keen. I was there since 20 years ago almost. And then I can see that a lot of people invested it to try the new technologies and then to move forward. And I think I agree with the speaker just now in there. The key thing is you need to go by phase, right? And then you cannot do everything all in one go. If you want to do everything all in one go, you may be scared to move on, because you just think about, can I like fix the problem, can I fix this problem and all that. And the other thing as well for the new technologies, AI, automation, whatever it is, if you look at it, it's always the case, something happened, people announce it, and then you need to, it looks like it's working, but you need to really try it and put in the use case, the user situation, to put it in reality to see whether it's really working, right? For example, China have been talking about like manless warehouse operations, right? People who work in that field would know that you probably going to need to wait for a while for that, but people start trying to do it. But we all know that it only happens when it's a certain type of product, a certain type of orders, then you can get to that point that it's really totally use the machine to replace people. And then I think, they have the right target. What do you want to do before you implement something is more important. Don't over expect it. Technology moves step by step. One day we will get there, but then not to start with, from day one and then over expect it. That's how I can see it.
Yeah, that's very true. Thanks for that sharing. In fact, one of the key questions that many users will ask is, when do you start to take the leap? What is that burning platform that tells you, yes, I need to start work on thinking about deploying AI and robotics now? So when is that now, right? We can say that, we can always give ourselves the excuse that AI and automation is still a novelty, right? But is the now or is the now tomorrow? Let's hear from the user. William, what do you think? When is that burning platform the trigger point for you to start really serious about AI and automation?
If anything, I really think that now actually all the platforms are learning, right? It's really quite fun to use because to us at least, if there's no AI element in our operations, it really can't work, or in a way that you require the amount of manpower to really do this sorting of jobs cluster to be really humongous, and a lot of our drivers and things actually welcome the AI assistant. Like just now we mentioned about the routing assistant, it helps them to reduce stress, help them to know the path, and they also bridge the information gap from both sides. Because now the driver don't need to really explain that, hey, look, there's too much jobs for me to finish. It's not that I'm lazy or anything. Because from the administrative side, you will see that, hey, it's indeed that based on the path and the conditions, that's only the number of jobs that this driver can really complete. I would say that if anyone would want to start with the AI at this era and time, right, or today's context, it's best to start with areas that you can inject flexibility into your system. Do not let any one operation process become the critical node. And because if that node is down, you will be in serious trouble. For example, in my area of last mile delivery, many last mile logistic have these three segments. A first mile collection, a centralized warehouse sorting, followed by a last mile delivery in which the jobs are being clustered and then the drivers picks up from the warehouse to deliver to the end consumer. So actually the centralized warehouse, you realize that is the point that essentially connects the first and last mile and all your multiple collection points and multiple delivery points. And if your warehouse is forced to shut due to any kind of, like COVID infection, basically your whole supply chain or your entire operations is down. So if any kind of like burning platform, you really need to think about what would be some of the critical nodes that you can inject flexibility, such that not to be caught in the situation if any of one of them is unable to operate in today's context.
That's very true, William. That's very true. In fact, I hear a few things from all of you as we speak, right? One is the fact that the people must be ready for it and want it, right? So the examples of the drivers is very useful, because if they find that there's benefit and there's use for the AI automation to be put in place, they would want to make sure it works, and that support is going to be key. So people is important. The second is from the operation standpoint, which is the critical node in the entire operation. You cannot afford to have that fail, right? So that is an area we want to watch. And then comes flexibility, right? You want to make sure that if it has a bottleneck, what is the alternative? And the system should be able to kind of support you on that. At the end of the day, in my earlier presentation, I shared a couple of points, right? One is the use of AI and automation should, one, provide the visibility of what's happening, and all of you alert to that piece. Secondly, to alert and provide kind of a notification that something needs attention, right? And that needs to reflect out to management. And thirdly, to provide enough information and understand where are the critical points so that it gives management support in decision making, right? So support for decision making. And of course, if all this three works well and there's sufficient learning and data sets to abstract out some rules to build an algorithm, then of course the next step is to look at full autonomy, right? So you really will go through from visibility to alert to decision support and autonomy. I'll see that that's probably the path that they have to go through. I'm going to call upon Joseph now, and Joseph, from your experience, what would you like to add to that discussion?
So I think we spoke quite a fair bit about the productivity gains and so forth. Let me place devil advocate, right, and kind of tap on those discussion about the human element. So one large human element, which is safety, how can we as logisticians kind of build safety into AI and automation, right? A simple thing. Let's say we're talking about last mile delivery, right? So I think today's context we talk about a lot more about last mile delivery. What about drivers fatigue? In a lot of the regions that I serve, we're talking about Indonesia, India, and so forth. You don't want the AI system. Yes, this driver might be the best productivity, the best person for the route and so forth, but he or she might have just came off a 12-hour shift or a 12-hour route. We don't want to plan another 8-hour or another 12-hour route right on top of that overnight route that he or she was previously on and so forth. So that's that safety element. How can we automate that? How can we build business rules around it and deploy that organizational wide, right? We across the globe. How can we build those safety and compliance and automate that? And I think, Oliver, you also made a really good point about visibility. So BluJay does we do our yearly so-called surveys, and we actually found that 58% of logisticians, players in our market space actually responded to say that visibility is actually a key focus for risk mitigation, because you as a business. As from a business scenario standpoint, sometimes you just cannot plan for every single bad scenario that would happen. Like the Swiss Canal situation. I mean, any logistician would be really hard pressed to say that, hey, we should have planned for that early on. So that visibility, how you get notified, how that information flows to you, were you visible, so that were you able to make necessary next steps, talking to our customers about the delays and so forth.
Yeah, that's very good points that you made. In fact, you highlighted one part, right? I mean, although you say it's a devil's advocate, but it's a very critical discussion. And that is the human ability to supplement or to work together with machines. AI runs 24/7. The human body does not.
Exactly.
Right? And this is where it is very important that along the way, the right human-machine collaboration is taken care of, right? There must be a means for the human to flag out and say, I'm really tired. I really cannot rule another 2-hour drive, right? And the machine must be able to take that into consideration in the whole process of the AI automation deployment. So Ada, when we talk about robotic process automation, right? A lot of this data is available. How can we actually integrate some of this paperwork and some of this information into the system so that management has visibility that, we have been deploying this driver A for the utmost amount of time, but we need to give a chance to somebody else as well. So what are your experience in that area?
Okay, thanks for the question, Oliver. So basically, I think, yes, very interesting, like ideas from the speakers. Definitely, I agree that adoption of AI or any technology should be phased in phases and not suddenly, because I think sometimes we have over expectation of technology, and then there is a human judgment element involved, which is very, very critical. Like some of the speakers said, there are human elements. People get tired, there need to be visibility of the things happening, etc. So yes, humans need to make the judgment of what is to be automated, what process should be automated, and there's a lot more in automation beyond, it's like route planning or prediction, etc. It can also start simple. I think one of the speakers mentioned, I think it was yeah. So Jonathan said don't over expect, right? I mean, it's like and we start small. I would suggest that we can start small from doing the automating even the paperwork. In logistics, in logistics companies, there is a lot of paper, so-called administrative work that we find that's very repetitive, like, having to do declarations into, say, for example, portals like TradeNet, and then after that, they need to go into their system, to prepare a BL, and then after that, they need to perhaps, pick up the HS code, etc. all these mundane tasks can also be left to the automation AI bots, and be able to decipher the information inside. You can also say like help the AI can also maybe help to classify the goods, saying that okay, which is considered a DG, which is not considered dangerous, etc. So yes, definitely there could be collaboration between the software bots and the humans, and to be able to make sure that the workplace is safe and efficient. Yeah, definitely the humans need to make the judgment of what tasks should be automated as well, and whether to believe the suggestion from the AI. You don't have to, it's like a believe 100%. Yeah. Thank you.
Can I add one point, Oliver?
Sure, please.
We've had this experience. In fact, when the human supervisor was allocating jobs, humans being humans, you have your favorite drivers, and you have people that you rely on to do when others fail, or when others perceive to fail. So there was a workload imbalance because supervisors had their favorite drivers, and they were allocating more jobs to certain drivers as compared to other jobs. When we implemented the solution, we actually put in driver profiles, vehicle profiles, and we set limits on what the maximum limits per driver. And what that did was it then enabled the system to fairly allocate jobs across the different drivers, across the different vehicles. So that is one of the elements that enhance safety through the use of AI. I mean, there's always human bias, but we can actually, it makes bias a lot more visible and allows us to then at least shape the bias a little bit more. On the second point on paperwork, Ada brought up a very, very important point on paperwork, and it was very interesting because what we found was that the real beneficiaries of you employing an AI-based solution and with RPA was actually the back office people, because very often they are the ones working late at night when all the documents come back in, and they have to do all the matching, all the delivery document matching, proof of deliveries, and then they have to update systems in order to generate invoices. So with RPA, because everything's in real time, as the information comes in, all the matching is done, proof of delivery is verified, and by the time at the end of the day, it's really just dotting the I's, crossing the T's, and they can go home to their families. So there is some real benefit as well using RPA, because from the human perspective, people talk about work-life balance, and I used to joke with people, it's very easy to have work-life balance as long as you don't have a life.
well said, Meng. As long you can have work-life balance as long as you don't have a life. Yeah. So this part around the human and the human judgment, it is very critical. The question really is, how much do you automate, and can you really achieve full autonomy? I'd like to hear from William from a user perspective, right? When do you say I have full autonomy automated in my environment, or where's that line drawn where you still need human intervention? Right? We can talk so much about human-machine collaboration and make sure that it supports you. It gives probably an alternative view, right, from the system's recommendation and the human judgment. But who makes the final call, and what would you William, as a user, add to that discussion?
So actually, the answer is somehow revealed in our discussion just now, right? So you really can't take the human intelligence part of it out of the artificial intelligence right now. There's still a lot of elements that requires the human analysis to ensure that the solutions are not biased against certain kind of elements. Like that's how we mentioned about the drivers, right? Because based on certain kind of variables that the system may recommend that certain drivers take more jobs because of their higher productivity or their favorite drivers and such, right? But that will then lead to these drivers being sort of like overworked, right? And what kind of limits do we set for this? That's what just now we were mentioning about how do we set limits of certain solutions that we deploy and stuff. And we also need to look at whether the data that whether there are certain changes in the operating model and stuff. So like when we deploy certain model, right, we take the data that we have, and we usually split them into half, right? We take half the data as a training set. So we use that to train the system things, and then we use the other half data that's not been seen by the model or the system before, and we test it out. And gives us a set of outcomes, and we then match it with whether these solutions make certain sense. But the final moment of truth is when we really deploy it, and our users accepting certain kind of recommendations that's being put forth to them, and why. I'll give you a very real example, like when we do our clustering of our jobs based on AI recommendations. We have a first two level. One level is at a particular collection point, we optimize the jobs and we say that, okay, you have 100 jobs, maybe 10 should go to this driver based on the region and stuff. Then we have a second level that optimize multiple collection points. Maybe you have another neighbor that also have a similar jobs that can go to the same area. So the driver will be then assigned, or these jobs will be grouped together, for this kind of like best optimized route for the driver to complete the jobs, right? So we thought that, hey, look, this is a great solution, right? The machine recommended us. We see that it works. But then when it's being deployed, we see that a lot of drivers are declining such a cluster. But when we look at it from the logical angle, it's like since you're making the trip, the cost of making the trip is marginal, and you get to deliver a lot more. But why? So then that's when we need to do a lot more digging and what happened in this rejection. So we realized that because last month was Ramadan, we have a lot of drivers that are Muslim, and they tend to not want to collect items that have pork content or non-halal. So your neighbor and you one is halal and non-halal, one sell fish, one sell meat. You put them together on a planning perspective, it works perfect. But from a other kind of cultural perspective, is when the machine doesn't understand. So you need this human analysis to ensure that the human element is being considered in all this machine output.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point, William. In fact, thanks for sharing that live experience around how AI and automation can affect your operation. In fact, what you've just brought up, and you repeated that word a few times, why, and why, right? Why does the drivers not take up that particular route? Why do the drivers reject that decision? That's very good. If it's a human, you can always go to the individual and ask why. If it is automated, if it's an AI, can the AI explain the background to the decision? In fact, that's exactly one of the questions that came out in the chat now, right? How it's often said that AI is a black box, and people don't feel comfortable when they don't understand why the decision is being made. And this is a very, very interesting point, right? How can that AI explain itself, right? Now, when it goes into the different nodes behind the scene and how it passes from one data set to another set and comes up with a conclusion, right? It probably lost track of where it has traversed. Right? So I'm going to ask maybe both Joseph and Jonathan now, in your thought process and your experience with the whole area of AI and automation, when we do a planning and you assign it to an individual to do it, if you don't agree with the decision, you could ask the individual why. But when you automate it, right, how are you going to ask the system or the AI behind why? All right, unless you have pre-designed the solution side that is able to answer some basic questions on why. So maybe Joseph, we start with you. What do you think? What are your thoughts around the explainability of AI and automation?
Sure. So maybe I'll talk about a real life customer that we actually did some deployment, and we were actually looking at some ESG so-called recommendations. That means because they were looking at dwell times, they were looking at reducing the dwell times. Their trucks sitting there, unattended for a really long time, because their goods are all high value goods. So they do want to make sure that, hey, the trucks are not so-called attended, and they keep having this problem about why this one particular truck keeps stopping in this area almost on a daily basis for an hour and a half, and we couldn't figure out why, until that human element comes in, Oliver. So there's no way that the system, we were looking at it, we were looking at where his next route is, we were looking at all kinds of data, but it just doesn't make sense till we actually had a chat with the driver and say that, we don't understand, why do you stay in this area for an hour and a half? You know that your inside your trucks could be, computer chips, could be iPhones, high value items and so forth. Why are you staying in this area for an hour and a half? And it turns out that it was his favorite hawker store beside that no one knows, right? No one will ever, amount of AI will be able to tell you that until you kind of have that conversation with him and kind of, I get it, I understand, and then you work around that, right?
Well, favorite food is not a bad thing. If it's something else, then we got to worry, right?
Exactly.
Jonathan, over to you.
Oh, this is a very interesting question. I seen that AI is a black box, and then I think it depends where you look at it. We think about it. People use AI to pay checks as well. Do you really need to know how this AI think about the next step for paying the checks and things like that? And then when you put in the real life example, it been used in different places. For example, one thing for face recognition nowadays, for all the payments, everything. So I think, like, to me, it's a black box. It's pretty makes sense if you want to know why. Why is making that decision. If I'm the AI, I would say, okay, you have programmed me that way. Okay, so so basically the AI thing is like you try to make a decision from where, from how you learn, right? And how it learns is the guys, the team who design this AI product, right? How it learns. And then the second thing is, if you keep picking up the environmental factors that can affect the decision, or all the factors that can affect the decisions, okay? Then the step 3 is based on, how we tell the AI, when you see this, how to make decision. And of course, not just teach and how to make decisions, that's become a programming, but it's combined with what it has been learning over the past when it go to process. So all those things put together, I just don't understand that, if it's not a black box, how can that work to tell the people? And human beings are the same thing. Like Oliver and myself, we look at one question, we look at one thing, we think differently. Why? Because what we learned in the past is different. What have we experienced is different. And then the way the thought process is different. That's why. So I think the AI thing is when you see we see reality is working, then it is working. Here's a black box. To me, it's okay one. Yeah.
Indeed. In fact, you brought up some suggestions around how you can get the system to explain, and one good point that I think there is the fact that as the system learns, there probably should be some form of logging process to understand what has changed in the rules, and that must be flagged out to management. And humans probably may have that final call to say that, no, don't add that rule because it's just a 1 in a million chance that it happens, so it shall not be a rule, right? But this is where the human and machine can come together and work on that piece. We have probably about 5 minutes left, 3 minutes left. I want to ask each of you one final question, and that is, if I ask each of you to look at the crystal ball, right, and ask yourself, what do you see as one major change that will happen in the next 5 to 10 years in the logistics space with the impact of AI? What would you say? I'm going to leave William to be last so that he doesn't get influenced. But let me start with perhaps our lady, Ada. What would be the one change in the next 5 to 10 years that you see?
Thank you, Oliver. Like you have said earlier, I think AI will definitely go mainstream, and that there will be a lot of tasks that can be, potentially done by automation and bots. And we will be having colleagues who are not humans. We will have, it's like bots working alongside us, and then being able to work with us. And I think another major change will be that the cost of deployment, the cost of adoption will go down tremendously. It's like for example, because more technologies and more knowledge is shared, among even between different companies, even competitors, they share knowledge among in the community, in the programmers community. And so with all that, I believe that the cost of AI adoption will go down, just like the adoption of mobile phones, how it has penetrated many cities in the world, even today, even for people who may not even own a computer, but they can own a mobile phone, and the power of computing is on the mobile phone. The power of AI will be inside their mobile phones as well, I believe, and then it will be it's like something that will be at the fingertips of everyone. And that there will be, it's like people who can learn faster and adopt faster will definitely be ahead of others. Yeah.
I better be on your side. All your predictions, I hope they don't come true. Or if they come true, I at least know what's happening. Joseph, over to you.
Thank you.
So I'll leave with a joke, right? So cyborg. My word is cyborg. so instead of cyborg, let's look at the term augmentation. I think the trend or what I crystal ball is definitely a lot of that human decision making, who actually focus on the high value activities, a lot of the repetitive tasks, I think, where we spoke about during the last 45 minutes and so forth, documentation, handling, workflow, automation, processing of data, RPAs and so forth. So a lot of those tasks can actually be automated. There's AI engines behind to drive that, but there's still the element of that high value activity as well as exception handling. Like I said, we can build exceptions till the cows come home, right? But sometimes it just doesn't make sense from a cost benefit analysis to build exception handling for that less than 0.001% chance that certain things might happen, and that's where the human element comes in, and that visibility, able to inform that human just in time to say that, hey, this is happening, please really pull up your socks, let's move on with the exception handling and so forth. So that's what I want to do.
So the human will not lose his place. That's great. So there's still a place for us.
Yes, definitely.
Jonathan, what about you?
Well, fun. I think if you look at that human being over the thousands of years, we have been trying to be like to create something, trying to be lazy, okay. And then we thought we're going to have that thing automated, and that machine in there can help us to do that. And then we're going to be like lazy, okay, we enjoy our life. But what is the reality? We just switching to new types of jobs. In fact, people getting more busy these days. Like all of us here, we're very busy. New technologies. So, okay, what I see in the coming 5 years, though, is that for logistic perspective, I know that a lot of people are talking about the transportations. But for me, it's really within the 4 wall, right? So a little bit different. So I will see that it gradually moving forward to manless, unmanned, okay, in the warehouse. But then people will worry about, does it mean that we're going to lose our job? I can tell you, job will not be less. Okay, it's just switching to new jobs. For example, you need to, instead of doing the work in the warehouse and there, you must change it to the job that to maintain the machines, okay, and to maintain the systems, and to manufacture all the machines and systems. That's all. So the conclusion is people would change the way they work. If you're talking about in the warehouse, logistic, less people in the actual the labor force. I mean, yeah.
Thank you, Jonathan. Meng and William, I'm going to give each of you 1 minute, just 1 minute in the interest of time. So, Meng?
Okay, very quickly. It was very interesting. I'm showing my age when Ada mentioned about working next to bots, and I just pictured the Jetsons. So
I know the Jetsons too, yeah.
the two technologies, the two changes I see coming very fast is edge technology, because everybody carries a mobile phone now, and the mobile phone does have a lot of processing power, where AI can be actually process on board mobile phones. So we'll see a lot more edge processing with real-time data helping us make decisions on a real-time basis. Secondly, I see there is a whole portfolio of solutions being offered by many different solution providers. I see some kind of confederation or commonwealth coming together, whereby different solution providers will be able to communicate with other solution providers in order to give, especially tier 2, tier 3 type visibility. Right now, everybody has their own solution. So one operator cannot see information from another operator. But because of the speed of logistics and the sheer volume of logistics, I see providers coming together and working out some kind of data transfer protocol whereby information can be transferred fairly rapidly without losing competitive advantage.
Thanks, Meng. William, now you're going to tell us the truth, right? All those technology providers have given this glossy picture of what's going to happen. What do you see happening in the user space?
On user space, I will see that indeed there will be a lot more data, maybe pushed to the back end, and there's a lot more connectivity happen. Different type of services can be then joined together using APIs and things. Then so we will then lower the cost for a lot of users, and especially users that are probably the more SMEs, the smaller users that would in no way be able to build their own models or have access to these resources. Solutions will then be more scalable and more bite-sized, meaning that you don't need to pay for solutions that is for 100 drivers when you only have 10. You could scale solutions based on the number of drivers you have, the number of seats and assets you really need to tag in a multiple of just one. You can just add one by one, and it gives you the ability to scale up your need for AI solutions from a very small base. Yeah, that will then really push the frontier and get a lot more companies or users on board.
Thank you. Well, in the interest of time, I will not summarize what you have all said, but I will just add one viewpoint to our discussion. Right? I see that in 5 to 10 years' time, right, we will avail ourselves with what I call frictionless delivery. Delivery that's on time, right, real time, and no excuses. Well, thank you very much, panel members. This has been a wonderful discussion. I know it took longer than expected, but really it's just so rich that I couldn't help but allow you guys to talk. I really appreciate all you. Thank you very much, Jonathan, Mr. Jonathan Kwok, Mr. Joseph Lim, Mr. Meng, Soho Hock Meng, and Ms. Ada Lim, as well as Mr. William Lim from uParcel. Thank you very much. And Marcus, over to you. Bye. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
You.
That was Mr. Oliver Tian and his panel discussion, AI and automation, a novelty today and perhaps a necessity for tomorrow. Thank you again, everyone, for presenting and sharing your wealth of knowledge. We will closing the session. As of now, please stay tuned. We will have a follow-up session with Mr. Soho Meng on AI. Please also take note, there's a second track going on. It's called Building a Total Trade Platform by GETZ. It's on track 2. Please feel free to join over there. We have a short break and be back after that. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Marcus.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.